For those who aspire to serve here in Washington, I strongly advise that you have your staff collect and give you clippings to read every day of the unkind things said about you. The kind things are repeated far too often, and when you make a mistake around here, it's the other guy's opinion of what you're doing. It's not a mistake. And that's part of what Washington's problem is. We read our own positive press and our own positive clips. We look at what we're doing for people rather than what we're doing to our democracy. I'm very dedicated to this committee, not because it has all the answers, but because if the American people have all the truth and access to greater and greater amounts of real information about where their money's spent, or maybe one might say where the other guy's money is spent, since about half of Americans no longer pay any net taxes, they will in fact change their government. They'll change them in how they vote, but they'll change them every day. I work closely with a group, in addition to Heritage, who gives me tremendous access to not only information, but to thought and to these ideas that make a difference here. I work with a group called POGO. Now, before I came to government, I assumed this was basically a Democratic Front organization. And clearly they lean to the left. But they also lean in the same direction when it comes to transparency and oversight. So today what I want to do is I want to give you just a few thoughts. First of all, on the constitutional obligation of the first branch of government. It is very clear that the executive branch is doing exactly what they should do. They lobby for more money, to do more things, and to make the executive branch more relevant. Nothing wrong with that. Since almost 200 years ago, the Supreme Court has done the same thing, except they don't lobby. They make decisions, and if we don't unmake them in some way, then they stand. But we're the branch of government that does two things. We appropriate and we oversee. We tax and we oversee. We authorize and we oversee. Or do we? The American people are not well served by their Congress whenever the executive branch fails. In 2005, I held hearings and used subpoena power at that time to subpoena the 5 heads of the major oil companies, because the organization, then known as Mineral Management Service, appeared to be way too cozy with the oil companies and seemed to not very much care about the American people's money, billions of dollars that their contracts were not collecting. The oil companies, to probably some people's surprise, gave us documentation and evidence that they had informed Mineral Management Service that the contracts were faulty and that billions of dollars would not be paid as a result, and they were told, don't worry about it, even though the statute very specifically called for this money to be collected. That was 2005. Everyone in Washington should hang their head in shame, including myself, that in 2005 we knew we had a completely dysfunctional organization that cared little about the American people and more about the parties they had at not just the taxpayers' expense, but at the oil companies, the natural gas companies' expense. And we did nothing about it. We didn't do the reform that is linked to oversight. 5 years went by, and we all know what happened in the Gulf. And as we research the actual failures, we'll find 2 things for sure. One, British Petroleum takes primary responsibility for not caring enough to be safe. And all the signs of those dangers were there since at least 2003. They were well known and well informed, but an organization that was too cozy with the people they were supposed to oversee, in fact, did nothing. And Congress did nothing about that organization in 2005 until the Gulf filled with oil in 2010. So when I tell you there's a great deal at stake, it's both oversight, which has been well understood. Oversight to the party in power is in fact defined by whether the president seems to be their party or not. And to the party out of power, it seems to be about whatever the party in power isn't doing. That's got to change. It's got to change once and for all. Oversight has to be bipartisan, and it has to transcend any changes in who's in charge. In the British Parliament, and for that matter most parliaments, the loyal opposition has tremendous authority in oversight. That's because parliaments assume that the party in power has all the power, and the only balance is the one that you create through oversight and enforcement. We did not anticipate that because we did not anticipate the size of government growing to where it is. I cannot fix, my committee cannot fix the problems of your government from a financial standpoint. We collect $2.1 trillion roughly every year. That's almost miraculously the size of the entitlements package. Social Security, Medicare, and the like consume all the money we collect. We then borrow $1.4 trillion this year to take care of the building next door, the park system, the IRS, the patent office, and everything else that's considered discretionary, which by the way includes the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. The fact is we are so far in debt that only through cuts in appropriations can we get to anything that resembles a balanced budget and a fiscally responsible government. You might say, well, why is it you came here if you told me you can't do anything about it? We can do something about it. We can create transparency in this modern age in which everyone who can Google can also be a research fellow for waste, fraud, and abuse in government. To do so, we have to break through a tendency in government to put up websites that are mostly propaganda while not putting up real databases that are searchable and cross-searchable against other databases. That's something that actually has been bipartisan. Chairman Towns and I have worked together to try to get data integrity that actually is searchable into every part of government. We have not yet succeeded as much as we would hope. Individually, we've gotten some parts like the FDIC, the SEC to do it. But in the Dodd-Frank bill, Chairman Towns and I put forward amendments which were accepted by the House and rejected by the Senate that would have mandated all these new oversight of hedge funds and so on include searchable information that would have the metadata necessary for people to really know what they're looking at. Many of you in the room have undoubtedly Googled over some time and then gone to the images to see the person that they've Googled. How many have done that? Okay. How many have ever done that and gotten all the right pictures rather than pictures of somebody who was at the same conference, Mickey Mouse, or any number of other pictures? The difference between every picture being the actual person that you're trying to Google, or at least somebody with the exact same name, if that's all the information you gave, the difference is metadata. If we, the government, insist that things be put in an orderly fashion in which each type of data is unique and the other reference material in the same database references back in a way in which it's cross-searchable, then as long as you have enough information, such as Darrell Issa, born in Cleveland, Ohio, 1953, you will 100% of the time get only one image, unless I have a twin I don't know about. That's the difference that government can give. We have 74 inspectors general in the United States government right now. We have 11 vacancies. Those inspectors general, only one has subpoena power. And I'm here today to tell you that all 74 need subpoena power. They need it more than I need it. Because the first obligation of government would be, in fact, to have internal investigations, to have people close to the problem that actually are on the side of you and of the taxpayers. Today, these IGs not only don't have the power to get information, but if they ask too many times, they're often fired. That's happened at HUD, it's happened at Amtrak, and it will continue to happen unless we have reform in those two major areas. One, Congress must be advised and must consent before the firing of a confirmed IG. And two, every IG should have the power to enforce getting the information they want. After all, these are people who were confirmed by the Senate for the specific purpose of knowing what's going on in the agency or branch of government that they're dealing with. It is absurd they don't have it. And to prove how important it is, the Department of Defense, being the only one that has it, since the IG has had subpoena authority, has never had to use it. It's very simple. You get compliance if compliance is expected. We need to do that. Well, let me digress just a little bit, because growth in government is certainly the problem, and we need to figure out ways to take large parts of government and not just do as Ronald Reagan did, which was to revenue share and send them down in blocks. That may be good as a transition, but we have to take whole parts of government and push it back to the people and say, here's your money in the transition, but you figure out how to raise the money in the future to do what you need to do for the people that you're most close to. And that includes all aspects, major parts of roads, certainly the bridge to nowhere would have been a legitimate project in Alaska if the people of Alaska had prioritized it with the revenue that they generated, rather than simply looking and saying, we have powerful senators, we get a big chunk of the money, we get more money back than we send in, where do we spend it? That's a pretty simple answer. But the same is true in public education. The same is true in so many areas. To do so, we're going to have to tackle the $2.1 trillion that we consider entitlements that are substantially all federal. And we're going to have to tackle the growth of things like our armed forces. I was on a plane yesterday with a rear admiral who will remain nameless, but he's one of 270 flag officers in the Navy. He was upset personally about the growth of the size of government in the Department of Defense. It's double what it was 10 years ago, and even after you deal with normalizing it for a number of reasons, it has said we can get more money, and therefore we do. Once we get more money, we can't live without it. I'm a hawk. I want to make sure my military is strong and fully funded, but not overfunded. There is waste in the military, there's inefficiencies, and there's just, I want what I want, and I've got the budget for it, like there is in every federal bureaucracy. We need to prove where it is and take care of it. I said I was going to digress for a minute, and I'm going to close and take questions by just telling people that today they're talking about a, quote, tax increase versus not tax increase. Let me just give you the scale of what we're dealing with. We have 1.4 trillion in annual deficit. They say if we take the people making over $250,000 a year and we don't give them any, we give them a higher tax rate of almost 5% on the amount over $250,000, that it will somehow help us. It will. 1.4 trillion, 5% of it, 70 billion is what it'll help per year. Now 70 billion is real money. I'm not going to tell a group of conservatives that that's not real money, but let's put it in perspective. Where do you get the other $1.33 trillion from in shortage? Well, let's just assume for a moment that we do what is so often popular in Washington. We take more from the rich and more from the rich. Let's assume for a moment that the rich didn't pay any other taxes, that they didn't pay state taxes and so on. Well, I did a little quick arithmetic. If we take just over 100.8% of their income, we still don't get quite there, but we will cut it by 910 billion. So just bear in mind, if we take everyone's income over $250,000 and we take it all, we reduce the deficit from 1.4 trillion to roughly $500 billion. We can do this together. We can make people pay their fair share. And as Americans, you will never have the opportunity to earn over $250,000 because we'll take it all. Period. And oh, by the way, California will have a bigger deficit because they count on some of that money at a little over 10% to pay their bills. That's how big the problem is, that if you take 100% of the top income producers, 100% of all small business profit over $250,000, you will, in fact, only take away about 2/3 of the deficit. And with that, I'd like to have your questions on any subject, that being